to me, it is in many ways as practical as it can get for direct response and for email marketing.
Hey, podcast listener, you're about to discover insider tips, tricks, and secrets to making more sales and converting more prospects into customers with email marketing. For more information about the Email Marketing Podcast or the Autoresponder Guy, go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Hey everybody, it's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy, coming to you from tropical Thailand, and it's time for episode 23 of the Email Marketing Podcast, where we talk about the top tips, tricks, and secrets for making more sales and growing your revenue with email marketing. Today, I'll be talking to Matthew Goldfarb about how to become the bad boy or girl in your industry, and in doing so, crush the competition, attract clients and customers you love to do business with, and in doing so, change the world. Now, we've all heard that phrase, nice guys finish last. And it's not always true, but often with relationships it is true. Nice guys, nice girls, people who are afraid to rock the boat often don't get anywhere. You know, they might get a mediocre level of success, but because they're unafraid to offend, they're too scared to stand out, they don't go anywhere very fast. So that's what this podcast is about. It's about dealing with this nice guy or nice girl complex and becoming a bad boy. It's not about being evil. It's not about being vindictive or a whinger or anything like that. It's about developing your edge, developing your dark side, learning to stand out and not caring what other people think. And this isn't just some cheesy woo-woo thing. This is something that can transform your business and make it way more satisfying and fulfilling as well. To get the show notes for this episode of the Email Marketing Podcast, go to dropdeadcopy.com/EP23. A few months ago, I surveyed my list, because everyone should be surveying their list, and I asked them a question, which was, what do you love about the Email Marketing Podcast? And I wanted to read one of those out today real quickly. Intro, outro song, great information that no one else has, solid marketing tips overall, a conversational style that reveals mindset, not just tips, and Australian accents. Now, I find that last bit a little bit funny because I've been in Asia for so long now that my family back home in Sydney, Australia, doesn't even think I sound Australian anymore. So thanks for believing in me and remembering that I am Australian. I really appreciate it. Now, in that survey, I also asked people, if you could ask me any question, what would it be? So I'm going to answer one of those questions now. It is, how do you come up with profitable email ideas every day? It's a good question. And the answer is, I don't. Not every email is profitable. I mean, that's the first thing you should know. And second, most of what I do is I just sit down and write. There's no pressure. There's no humongous goal or anything. I sit down, I set a timer for 15 minutes, and I write an email. Sometimes I write 2 or 3 if I'm on a roll. Sometimes I write none. There's not really a secret to it. Just sit down and write. You don't need to sit down and go, I'm going to write a profitable email today. You need to sit down and go, I'm going to write an email. I'm going to write a bad email, right? The secret to writing good, profitable emails is writing enough bad, really bad emails that the good ones just work their way out of you. They work their way out of your brain, okay? So it's that simple. No secrets, just got to sit down and do the work. Let's get into it. Let's get into this interview with Matthew Goldfarb and find out how to be a bad boy or girl or alien with your marketing. It's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy. I'm here with Matthew Goldfarb, the head honcho or chief renegade officer at Corporate Renegade, a creative agency focused on creating breakthrough copy, messaging, strategy with a really simple end goal in mind, which is to help people stand out. So Matthew's goal with Corporate Renegade is to help people obviously stand out, get noticed, and ultimately get paid. So, which I love. It's not about open rates and all this vanity stuff. It's at the end of the day about making sales and getting paid. And today we're going to talk about similar to empathy in that it's very high level, kind of where you would start with your marketing before you're writing emails, before you're thinking about the nitty gritty of how you're going to execute a strategy, that you go all the way back to the very beginning and start defining. You obviously want to understand your audience, and there's empathy's tied into it, but you want to understand, who are you? What's your why? What are your core values? What do you care about? And, what are you trying to create in the world? And then using this as kind of like a marketing pillar to drive business. So we're going to talk about that. And this is what Matthew does with clients, as far as I know. He was recommended by Greg Rollett. So we're going to talk about this and how to use Matthew's strategies to figure this big picture stuff out. So it'll be good. How are you going today, Matthew?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm really good. Fantastic. A little bit tired. So I'm getting a coffee. It's morning here in Thailand, you see.
Well, yeah, I can hear, I can't tell if it's birds or chickens on your side.
There's both, but, you got the morning birds and the chickens and stuff, but, yeah, it's both. I got a good microphone now, so it filters most of that out. Anyway, before we get into this big picture marketing stuff, give us a quick background on who is Matthew Goldfarb.
Awesome, definitely. So, obviously, thanks for having me. I'm psyched to be here. And so, I kind of started my career. I worked in advertising in New York City for about 12 years. I kind of broke in as a writer, doing television commercials and print advertising, and kind of all the traditional media stuff. I don't know if John, if you know this, if it ever went out there, but I used to do commercials with like Mr. T and 1-800-COLLECT when he kind of came back on the scene, and that's how I kind of broke into the industry of being a creative writer. And I got to work for just a whole lot of agencies, and eventually moved into digital before finally just kind of having enough of working for big agencies. And kind of, even though I was working on really cool brands, I've worked on everything from Volvo to Dove and Subaru, even like Viagra. But after about 10, 11 years, I just really got tired of working for other people, and kind of got tired also of just working for companies that I didn't feel were doing anything positive. So kind of said, screw it, and went out on my own. And that's where I came up with Corporate Renegade, which was this idea of taking everything I had learned over the years and really bringing it to the small business owners, the solopreneurs, and kind of giving back and kind of giving them the secrets, but not necessarily requiring a $50 million agency to do it. And so just been in business for 4 years, and I've been rapidly growing, and just getting to talk with awesome entrepreneurs like yourself from all over the world, and really helping people to stand out. And that's the shortest version I could give you of who I am and what we do.
Fantastic. Okay. So you're doing all the corporate stuff, and then you moved into this, you started your own business, and then you began, it seems like you kind of, from just kind of experience and testing these concepts out, you started to create this why for your own business, and you had a mission. And then now that's what you're helping other people do.
Exactly. So, when I first started the business, it's always an interesting story. I really just kind of came out as Matthew Goldfarb copywriter, right? Like that was kind of how I launched my site. And I wrote this whole thing on my site about how copy was kind of I called it the redheaded stepchild to design, right? Everybody loved things that looked pretty. Nobody really cared about the words. And this was before I really understood direct marketing and really how to use copy for internet marketing. And it was a clever site, right? It was kind of cool. It showcased my portfolio, but people weren't really getting excited about me or the work I was doing. And I just kind of found myself one day really pissed off about all the work I had done in corporate America, and kind of feeling like I had wasted all these years, and realizing that I really had been kind of holding back in myself. Like I never really shared my full opinions. I was trying to be nice and be liked by everyone. And it only got me so far. And so I woke up one day just really pissed off about all these things, and wanting to just start really being honest with people, really start sharing, like, this is what I think, this is what I care about, this is who I am. And out of that, this idea of like the corporate renegade came out, right? People who aren't playing by the rules. And the moment that I actually started kind of sharing my opinion and stopped trying to be liked by everyone, and sometimes said things that went against the polite thing to say, it started bringing in clients, and it started to grow my business. And I suddenly realized that kind of that more that you're bringing who you are and just being real, it's which sounds so obvious, in conversation, but so many people are scared. It really transformed my business, and then when I started doing it with my clients, it did the same for them. And so that's kind of where it all started for me.
Okay, that reminds me. Maybe a month or 2 months ago, I read a book called Radical Honesty, which is not just about saying what's on your mind, but really being honest about who you are and just kind of giving your whole self to the world. Which sounds a bit woo-woo in a sense, like it has a bit of a weird feeling to it. But I love this idea that you're kind of using your business as an expression of who you want to be, in business and personally, which is really cool, because then you find that's when it gets really, really fulfilling.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, especially like if anyone's listening, like if you've ever worked in a corporate background, like you've kind of been taught, like it's almost like a separation of church and state, right? Like you have your corporate kind of persona, and then you have your real persona, and like they're not supposed to meet. And right. So a lot of people, when they kind of switch, they don't realize even how to break that down. And what I found, and I didn't even realize this at the beginning, was like your business is such a great way to share your personal expression, as long as it's as it's a means to helping other people.
Right.
And it just becomes so much more fun because, look, I mean, you live your business, I live my business. There's no way I can't bring it in. And so why try to fight that? I'd rather just kind of bring it in and recognize that that's actually why people hire us, of kind of who we are. And what I always say is like what you give a crap about.
Right. Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun lately. I do a lot of email marketing to my own list and, doing this podcast. And it's so much fun to be like, it took me a while to get there, but I feel like now I'm kind of coming into that zone where, I just write and I have fun and tell stories from my own life and just, I don't take it too seriously. But what that means is I'm just kind of being myself. Well, that's what it feels like. There's no game that I have to play. There's no role that I'm trying to fill or anything. I don't have to sit down and go, who's this John McIntyre guy that I have to kind of, get in that costume and try and be that. It's just kind of, you just do it. And it's really liberating because you don't have to try anymore. It's kind of like you just, at the bar or you're at a restaurant or dinner or a picnic or you're out with some friends and you don't feel like you need to be anyone other than you are. And so it's very liberating and it actually works really well because it endears you so much to the audience. People love this when they see someone and they come into contact with someone who's just real because it's so rare.
Yeah. And I love the way you said that, even like a costume, right? Like those people who like, they need a moment to put on their face, or their act before, but you're absolutely right. And like for me, it kind of for me came out of just an exhaustion point where I had just spent so many years like trying to be a nice guy and wanting to fit in and, not allowing kind of my own Matthew side come out. And it's just, it got exhausting and you kind of almost forget who you are. And that's why so many people get screwed up. But the moment that you just say, screw it, and you just kind of allow that, it's a game changer. And it's like I said, it's shocking to me that we even have to have this conversation because it seems like everyone, of course, be who you really are. But it's so hard for people because people are terrified. Like God forbid somebody thinks something bad about you or sees that you're not perfect or you screw something up. God forbid that happens. It's like the world's going to end. But what I've been learning and doing in my business is like the more we kind of put it out there and we share our own thoughts, not only does it allow us to be free, but it actually really connects us with people. I always talk about this idea that I learned from this author, Joe Calloway. He has a book called Category of One, one of my favorite books. And basically it's the concept that, no matter what you do, right? Whether you're a writer or, you're an actor or whatever, or you're a video person, like there's always going to be another person someone can hire, right? There's none of us who are so different. Like you can take me, there's a million other copywriters. So how the heck do I differentiate myself? How do I get somebody to say, I want to hire Matthew versus somebody else? And that really comes down to who you are as a person, kind of what your values are, kind of your personality, your point of view. That's the differentiator. And as soon as people start to realize that, they realize that that's how you're really going to connect with people. It's just no one can really copy who you are as a person. And if they do, that's where you kind of realize like if something's off, it's because they're trying to be someone that they're not.
Right. Right. And just to bring it back to email is that if people do this and then they go and start creating their marketing material, which is, that's their email marketing and their sales copy and all those things, it's going to be imbued with this new sense of power because they're not just another marketer out there, hawking their wares. There's someone with an identity and with a mission and a beliefs and something that they stand for. And I've been reading a lot about cult marketing lately. Checked out the 48 Laws of Power, and there's a chapter in there about it. You look at religions and you look at all these, majorly successful companies, and they're all great at creating cults. And one of the things that I noticed that they do so well is create this idea that of meaning that someone can buy into, and that most people lack meaning and fulfillment and satisfaction in their life. And when someone comes out and says, I stand for this, they want to align with you. When they align with someone like that, they feel more fulfilled, more satisfied, and that's why it's so powerful.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned some of those books, and basically everybody wants to be heard, and they want to feel like somebody gets them and kind of gets their worldview and has similar values. And the thing especially with cults and even with strong marketers or strong companies or even the brands that we all love, like Apple, it's all about that vocabulary that you're creating, right? So it's like you develop your own language, you become insiders. And when that happens, the business and your brand takes on a life of its own.
Right.
And so the best marketers are the ones who, develop language. And it's really all it is their own unique way of saying the same stuff as everyone else. And then once you kind of figure out how you're going to talk about yourself, what your business, what your voice is, and what you stand for. Like, of course, there's always going to be, especially with email marketing, like you always will have tried and true headline ideas that are going to work, right? There's ones that you can always kind of turn to, but you can always kind of then kind of put your little spin on it that is uniquely you. And that is where the real power comes in, because you'll never have to be fully feel like you're, you're stealing someone else's ideas because you're bringing your own attitude and meaning to it. And that was a long response to your piece, but it's exactly what you were saying.
Right. And I just thought of something else that I think why most people find this so hard and so challenging to get or understand. Like, it's a very simple thing. Go out and say and be yourself. But the problem is that most people are looking for a book or on Amazon or an ebook or some sort of course that's going to tell them how they finally do marketing right, how they finally break free of the 9 to 5 and figure out this marketing thing and start making money. And maybe they're business people and they're already doing it, but they're looking for someone else to tell them how they should go and do it. And while those things are useful and they do help, and you need to have a bit of know-how with that the real power comes when that all becomes secondary. That becomes kind of unconscious. You've kind of got that intuitive sense to it. And then you just start using the whole thing, the whole framework as just an expression of who you are. And no one can give you a book that tells you, here's how to be who you are. You got to go out there and figure it out for yourself. And that's the really hard part.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, once again, it's like, exactly. It's like, how do you teach someone to be themselves? Right. And what I do find for most people is everyone is kind of themselves, but we're all kind of, it's all backed up by years of like conditioning of like, oh, you're not supposed to sound that way, or you want to look cool. And, especially us, right? We want to look like cool guys. We want to look like, we're the shit all the time. And a lot of it is just like kind of an unraveling. I kind of talk about all this, like, it's like layers of an onion. Like there's all this crap on top and you just have to start peeling back. And that's how you get back to the core of kind of what you're all about. And it's, terrifying at times, but anyone you ever see who has a great message, anyone who like, they're very clear in their communications. And every time you're like, wow, how did they actually say it? It's like they've done some work to take a step back and be like, this is what I'm all about. And this is the voice I want to communicate to other people.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, some people, I've been calling myself the autoresponder guy because I found that I was doing a lot of email marketing and autoresponders for people. So it's kind of like a natural seg into that. But when I speak to people sometimes, because people see the benefits of that, of positioning, doing some strong positioning like that and creating like a USP. So, if you're trying to recommend someone to go and write an autoresponder for, you can recommend a copywriter or you can recommend the autoresponder guy. People really understand the benefits of that. But a lot of people don't understand that takes time. Like, you can't just come out and people say, well, who do you think I should be? What guy should I go and define myself as? And it's not as simple as just kind of going, well, I'm going to be this guy or I'm going to be that guy. You kind of have to get out there in the ring. You have to do stuff. You have to work. You have to kind of fall flat and make mistakes and have success. And you kind of just crawl forward and you gradually chip away at it. It's a bit like a sculpture. This is a bit of a cheesy illustration, but like a sculpture, it starts off as just one big chunk of rock, which is kind of how we are when we start. And then gradually we kind of chip away until finally we have that masterpiece.
Yeah, it's actually a great metaphor. I mean, in the sense that, right, a sculptor always say it's the sculptor doesn't, sculpt it. It's like the sculpture reveals itself, right? So so that's exactly it. And I love how you said that too. I mean, so many people, like, they come to me and they want like a catchphrase, like, like if you go and see speakers and someone will have something that they'll say to the audience and they're like, well, I want one of those. And I'll say to them, well, have you ever actually been on stage before? And they'll say no. And I say, well, how can I give you a catchphrase if you've never even tried something out in the audience? How do you know until you've gotten out there and taken your licks and fallen on your ass? And I think you're spot on. I mean, I don't know enough, John, about how the autoresponder name came, but I wouldn't doubt that at some point someone just said, oh, go to the auto. Yeah, he's the autoresponder guy. And that right. May very well have been what stuck. And it's almost like if someone else gives you that name, it's actually more powerful than if I showed up tomorrow and I'm going to be, I'm going to be Mr. Copy, and without any other story or any other piece to it.
Yeah, there needs to be a backstory where people can identify with. Well, we're getting real conceptual here. How about we get into some, like, how do you teach people to do this? Like, it sounds like that's what you do, is you're really getting in and helping people knuckle down into what really defines who they are. How do you help them chip away at this rock so the sculpture reveals itself?
Awesome. Yeah, I always have to be careful. I have a psych background, and I tend to get cerebral, and I love talking about theory, and I always have to be careful with people. So this might feel a little conceptual, and as people are listening, it might even feel a little uncomfortable. But really, the way I kind of approach copy is I work in like 3 ways, right? So I start at the beginning, which is what I'm going to kind of take us through a little process. But I always start at the beginning with what I call like your movement or your manifesto, which is really about the why of what your business is all about. And that's what we'll get into detail. But just to give the framework, and it's kind of like, I'll also just say this. It's like when it comes to people hiring you from buying from you, it's partially what you do, the actual service, but a lot of it can be why you do it.
Right.
And so for me, it always kind of starts back at like the why for people. because if they're not feeling clear, then we get into the message, which is being able to actually articulate what your business is, what your product is, who it's for, why it's unique. And it's not until you have both of those pieces down foundationally that you can really start to write copy. And what I always find funny with people with writing copy is sometimes it's like every time they try to write something, it's like they're starting from scratch. And the reason is because they don't have the foundation of the other two pieces. And so the first piece, which we're going to chat about, which is this whole idea of kind of your movement, it really goes down to a few things. And for some people, it might feel touchy-feely what I'm about to share, but I always like to ground it in this, is that what is, there's this book I read, it's called Grow by Jim Stengel. And they did a study of the top 50,000 brands, in the world. And of those 50,000, the top 500 brands in the world, the ones that make the most money, brands like Starbucks, Coca-Cola, part of what makes them successful is not just what they're selling, right? Because it's Coca-Cola sells sugar water, essentially. Right. The other part is actually the core values of the brand. Okay. And kind of, the ideals of the brand. And so they found this actual positive correlation between like the ideals of a brand and its financial performance. And so for anyone who's like, I don't give a shit about telling people what I care about, here's the bottom line. It's like when you actually share what you do, it actually, there's, proof that it actually can make you more money. So for those people who don't care about, feelings and values, there's a financial incentive for you.
So this isn't just about being, doing this because it's a nice, fluffy, feel-good thing to do. This is about making more money. This is like, you want to make more money, you got to figure this stuff out.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the whole thing for me with business. It's like, I want to have good clients and we want to do good work, but, we're here to make money. We're here to make our clients money. And this is a way we've found to make money that also, doesn't make us feel like we have to take a shower after every time we do something.
Right.
So here's kind of the breakdown. So I'm going to kind of take a light version, but really what it's going to start at is the first thing I'll always ask clients is kind of like, what is the purpose, right? Like, take away everything else beside, take away all the fancy marketing lingo, all the tactics. It's like, why are we actually here? Like what is getting you up in the morning? Why are you willing to kind of like bust your ass and, work crazy hours to build a business where there's not even a guarantee you're going to make money? Why are you willing to do this and not just go get like a day job and work for someone else? And the reason I kind of start there is because you really have to be clear on what is the purpose behind what you're doing. And this can be anything, right? Like I always talk about, there's brands like Dyson vacuum cleaners, yep. Right? Which is, sometimes we call it scratching your own itch. Like there's something in the world that you want to change or an opportunity that you see that perhaps no one else sees. And this was a guy who wanted to make vacuum cleaners that didn't lose suckage. And, I don't think the world was asking for this. Nobody was asking for a better vacuum cleaner. And now, they're like the Apple of vacuum cleaners or whatever brand is, your best brand.
Right.
But it was starting with like this purpose of something that was getting you up in the morning. And everyone just kind of has to have that. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be noble. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be something, other than just like, you have to know actually what you're doing and what's motivating you. Because it's something that people really, really care about. So I always just kind of start there, like, right. So what's getting you up? What's getting you going? Why are you willing to do this? The next piece, it's kind of a two-parter, but I kind of get into what I call like your core values, and both your personal and your business core values. And the reason I do that is essentially, especially if you're a solopreneur or a small business owner, you are your business, right? So especially if you've worked for other people, we've all kind of said, if I have a business, I'm never going to run it like this guy because he's a jerk, which I certainly had. And so I ask people to kind of list out like what are the core values that kind of represent who you are as a person. So, for me, for example, one is kind of just being curious in everything that we do. Like ever since I was a kid, like if I see everybody going one way, I want to know why they're going that way and can I go another way? If something is kind of, if everyone says this is the way it has to be, I always want to question that. And that's just kind of part of who I am. And other ones might be about like just respecting people or, just kind of doing, trying to be in integrity with what I do. And the reason this is important is because when you have your business, you are your business. And most people don't actually take the time to sit down and list this out and actually be very conscious of putting this into the way that they're running their business. So I start with your personal core values, and then I ask you to actually turn them into business core values.
Okay.
And this is also, again, important because so many people forget who they are on a daily basis. And so you need to be able to kind of have that on the wall.
Okay.
So and if, interrupt me at any point if you think I am not clear or if, want me to go into more depth. Okay, awesome. So those are the first pieces. And then that's first, the beginning is about getting clear on who you are, right? And so a lot of people they don't take that time, and it's always shocking to me.
Yep.
I consult for a lot of people. I help people with their messaging, and they'll just go off and all these things that they want to do. And I always want to just be like, well, why are we even doing this? Like, what do you actually want? And why do you want it? And once we get kind of clear on that, then we can figure out, okay, who are the people that we're actually trying to connect with? And also, not only who are we trying to connect with, but how do you actually see the world? And it's something that I call like your reference point. And, and Seth Godin will often, talk about, I'm assuming you're familiar, man.
I know of Seth Godin. Yeah.
Okay. I always assume like that anybody that I've read that everyone's like, oh yeah, I know that guy. So Seth Godin is definitely one of, the gurus of marketing, has a lot of great books. And he has this whole thing on like worldview, which is the ideal people that you're going to connect with are people who share your worldview. And these are people who see the world the same way that you do, who have similar experiences, and who can actually relate to the things that you're talking about. And so I always talk about like, having a reference point for yourself and how you see the world. And also it's about seeing if your ideal clients have this. So kind of like case in point. So if I say to somebody, and I'm actually, John, I'm just going to throw this out at you. And so people listening, this is obviously not a planned thing, but so when I mention the color blue to you, like what shade of blue pops in your mind?
Kind of like a dark blue, navy blue, but a little bit lighter.
Awesome. And now what's the reference point that's making you think of that specific shade of blue?
A bottle of water, the cap for a bottle of water.
Perfect. So that's what I love, right? Because I can be in a room and ask 50 people and I get 50 different shades. And then when I'm teaching this, the next thing I'll do is I'll show a slide of the Benjamin Moore, the paint company, their catalog of colors for blue. And there's literally, 1,000 different shades of blue.
Yep.
And the reason that's really cool is that, we have to be clear on what blue means to me. I have to be clear on what blue means to you, because when we're creating messages and we're talking with people, we have to understand both what kind of blue I'm seeing and what my audience is seeing.
Right.
Because when those don't match up, that's where there's sometimes that, the market to message match doesn't match up.
Right.
And in an ideal world, if you see blue as a navy blue, we actually want to find your people who see that same color.
That's a really cool point that I think a lot of people miss. They think that they have to go out and they have to figure out who they're, I've talked about this before. They have to go out there and find their target prospect. But I think when you step it up a little bit, it's kind of like you define who you are. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, but this sounds like what you're saying. You figure out who you are, and then translate that into business terms. So your business has an identity. And then rather than trying to please people or win them over by trying to appeal to however they are, you just go out there and exhibit who you are. You just go and put yourself out there in the world as, make sure your values are known and, just put it all into the marketing. And then you literally just attract, because like attracts like. So when you're talking about what you like and what you hate, and you make that public, the people that come to you for business and for clients and for services and all those kind of things, they're going to be coming to you because they agree with your beliefs, with your principles. So it's kind of like you don't have to find someone, you don't have to think, well, what sort of color blue does our prospect want? You just have to think, well, what color do we like? And then how can we communicate that we like that color through our marketing? And then because what will happen after that is all the people that come to us will be people who like the same color of blue.
You nailed it. And it definitely flies in the face of what a lot of people will tell you, right? Because people are saying like, you have to appeal to everyone. And that's why I hate corporate. That's why I hated corporate America, because it was like you got very vanilla and you tried to appeal to everyone. And, obviously you have to have a good business, and obviously you need to be great at what you do, but like does attract like. And it's so much easier for someone to self-select themselves than for you to convince them. And it's such a game changer. And so that's why we do it. And I always say I'll put my blue out there, and I have tons of people who will come up to me and be like, how dare you use that blue? Who do you think you are?
Right.
And to me, that's a good sign. Like, if you're not getting hate mail, you're not doing a good job in your business. Yep. That's always been a big thing. And so that's why that reference point is really important. And don't get me wrong. I mean, even when you know who you are, if you're going to a certain audience or you're pitching to a certain client, you have to be aware of how they see the world. But the best success is really when you can find an audience that actually has a similar worldview or has a similar reference point. It just makes it so much easier. And I go to a ton of conferences and meet a ton of people. And the more we just kind of put out, for me, my own way of being and who I am, those are the people who come to me. And over time, like you said, you start to build a following and you start to build clients who have the same values. And it's just a hell of a lot easier to do business.
Yeah, so it reminds you of the pickup thing where guys go out there and they try and run routines and tricks and all those kind of things to try and get a woman to sleep with them. And I remember a friend of mine mentioned this, that a better strategy is go out there and just be yourself. And, there's going to be women out there who don't like you. Like, it's kind of like the customers that like, you shouldn't like that color of blue. They're offended by it. But what happens is you continue to exhibit who you are. Eventually, you find someone who just likes you for who you are. Instead of you trying to win someone over, you're just being who you are. And then you naturally attract and build that, relationships. And they're much more satisfying as well because you don't have to be anyone other than yourself.
Yeah. It's just so much easier. And it's actually, that's how I met my wife too. It was like, she always teases me. I'll give you the short version of this. But she always teases me because I lived in New York for years and dated and spent tons of money and just never really found someone because I was trying to put on this image. And by the time I met her, I just was like, you know what? I'm not trying anymore. I'm just like, this is who I am. I'm taking to places that I love. And so, she met me right when I stopped of like, the $100 dinners. And I took her to like, our first restaurant was at this little Indian place and it was like a $15 dinner. And, and now we've been together for 10 years. So, go figure. Yeah. So you're spot on with it. And don't get me wrong. I'm not telling people to kind of like, throw all your dirty laundry and everything out there. I mean, you still have to be strategic and a good marketer in what you're doing, but it's just, to me, it's such an easier game to play. And then what I can also do is, I'll tie it all together on how this all fits together into kind of like what your brand is all about. But it's, you're absolutely right. And it was something that I just kind of discovered on my own. But, so basically we take your purpose that you start putting together, your core values, your reference points. And here's where it gets kind of fun, right? This is where like cool brands come up with, or, cool names, which is, when you start to look at all these different pieces of it, I always invite people to start to think about like, what is the big picture behind everything that you're doing? Right? Like, when you look at kind of your own story, what you value, your business values, the reference points, like, can you start to find like a theme behind it all? Or is there like a big story that's there that you really care about? And it's when you start to do that, that's when you can kind of start to create like that brand idea or that personality of you that you can start to tie up in kind of a cool marketing message. But it comes from a very real place because you're not just trying to sound cool. It's very much a part of who you are. And all the brands and all the business guys who have really strong voices, they've done this in one way or the other. And when you can start to put it together, that's where you really start to create a voice and a brand and a personality that, people just really start getting attracted to.
Right. I love talking about this stuff. I feel like we could go on forever. I find this stuff so interesting, and it's not always instantly practical in that it can be very conceptual, but it's so valuable. Short term, it won't do a whole lot, but long term, this is what you build a huge business off. And some people might think that this isn't really useful for email marketing or direct response or that kind of thing. It's just about good copy, but good copy and good emails and good everything, just everything you do, it will be transformed when you figure this stuff out. And it's not, you don't sit down and, you can do like, a little workshop or, an exercise on a piece of paper, but this is really forged when you kind of just work with clients. And it's kind of like you keep these things in mind and gradually you you chip away, to go back to that metaphor, gradually you chip away at that stone and you figure it all out. But it's kind of like you got to keep it in mind as you're going along.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, to me, it is in many ways as practical as it can get for direct response and for email marketing. And because there's, for me, there's kind of two ways. There are those people who it's like, each campaign is like the only campaign you ever think about. And obviously we're trying to maximize it and get as much sales. But like the real money is in building that platform and that relationship with your customers that, every time you sell something, they're just going to go and buy it because they don't care. It doesn't even matter what it is, just because of who you are and what it's about. And so when you develop messages and when you develop, strong headlines that are about your voice and your point of view and the stories that you're telling, even when you're selling, right? Like even when you're like hardcore in the middle of a launch, like trying to get people in, when you have a point of view and when you're able to even articulate, like, this is why I'm pushing you so hard, it just all fits together.
Right.
Versus like that one time, let me just try to squeeze everything out of somebody. And that's where I think a lot of people get into trouble. And that's where a lot of people lose their audience because it feels like this is your only shot. And if you don't do it now, so be it.
Okay, great. So we're going to have to wrap it up just because we're just a little bit over time, which is fine. But before we go, you have a conference coming up or a seminar coming up in New York. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, awesome. So it's an event I'll be doing October 26th. It's a Saturday in New York City. And I'm actually calling it the What Do You Stand For event. And it's a one-day workshop with me and my team. And really, for the people who can attend, it's going to be a chance to learn more about how to start defining the why behind your business, how to start kind of bringing that empathy and that movement piece to your business, so that if you're missing it, that you can really start to connect how to talk about what you do with why you do it. And it's just going to be like this really fun, interactive workshop. There's going to be about 100 to maybe 150 entrepreneurs, and we're just going to be there to have a good time and really just push the envelope on what you think is possible or what you think you're allowed to talk about in your business and really to help transform it.
Great. Okay. And where can people hear more about that? And I think you mentioned something about a promo code.
Yeah. So all you have to do is go to whatdoyoustandforevent.com. So www.whatdoyoustandforevent.com. And the tickets for the event, I think, are $197, but for anyone who's a listener and lives in the area, we're going to give them $50 off the ticket. So when you do buy it, all you have to do in the coupon code is just type the word. I'm going to make it one word, all caps, drop dead, which I think is in honor of you. But right, so it's like, so if you punch it in, you'll save $50, and it's really a great. It's going to be a really great event, and I stand by everything. I think what I'm going to give them is great, and if somebody at the end of the day feels like, you know what, this is a waste of my time, like I will gladly give them their check back because it's really for those entrepreneurs who are tired of being nice and really just want to, everything that we're talking about. It's like this, but having the actual time to go through it all.
Fantastic. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes at dropdeadcopy.com with the promo code. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and talk about this stuff. I think it's really helpful.
Oh, my pleasure. I've had a blast, and I could talk your ear off for another hour. So I think your audience will thank you for stopping us before we get too far ahead of ourselves.
I can't wait. I can't wait to find out what they think. All right, man. Cheers.
Take care. Thank you.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. If you want to discover more insider tips, tricks, and secrets about driving sales with email marketing, sign up for daily email tips from the autoresponder guy. Go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Sign up, confirm your email address, and I'll send you daily emails on how to improve your email marketing and make more sales via email. You'll find out why open rates don't matter and the 7-letter word that underlies all effective marketing and much more.